Calling all stations. Clear the air lanes. Clear all air lanes for the big broadcast.
People of the internet, and welcome to the latest installment of the Sons of Serizawa podcast. I am your temporary host for this episode, Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir. Here with me are my co-hosts, David Joshua Hernandez, aka Gorizard.
So, since you're taking over for Bill today, that means you inherit his title, which means we'll call you Fat Andres.
God damn it. And with me is none other than Dylan McCandless, aka Super DM64.
I find it so hilarious that as the fattest member of this group, I'm the only one not to have been called fat something.
Right. I think maybe because you kind of come off as possibly the most intimidating, so nobody wants to make a fat joke out of you.
That's been my strategy in life, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you got that like kind of stone cold look on your face. You got the sunglasses on, and you just kind of have this like dead stare at people. And then when the people look at you, they're like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna bother. No, thank you. Please don't hurt me."
Yep.
And that's how you get through life.
Freshman day back in high school.
Were you just as tall as a freshman?
Not quite as tall, but pretty close.
Okay, so I guess that also helps. You see, ladies and gentlemen,
all the other freshmen.
Yeah.
All the other freshmen were getting put into dumpsters. Like, I don't even think most of the people knew that I was a freshman.
I was the dumpster.
Like, one went that way. I just seen one, so he went that way.
It went there, boys.
So you mean you still have some growing to do?
But yeah, that's been my approach. It's worked out pretty well so far.
And that is how you win at life, America, or the world, whoever is listening to this podcast. You see, it's not through compassion, it's not through cooperation that gets you through life. It's through intimidation and fear and force and physical presence.
That's Bill got his management position.
I'm pretty sure that's how many of us got to where we are today. Which isn't that far, but that just goes to show that we don't have as much of the things I just mentioned as Dylan has. So anyways, what are we going to be talking about for this episode of the Sons of Serizawa podcast? Well, I've actually brought to the table a topic that I found a little bit interesting, because during this week, I started thinking more about like this sort of idea randomly came to my mind, and that was the idea of franchises that had a lot of potential, or franchises that were so many people were planning to take like a property and build into a successful franchise and completely failing at it. Because nowadays, that's all a lot of Hollywood producers want nowadays. They want to make, they don't just want to make a movie. They don't just want to make a trilogy. They've got to make a cinematic franchise. They got to make something with toys and spin-off movies and TV shows and comic books and merchandising, where the real money from the movie gets made, to quote Spaceballs. And so I'm thinking like this year we are going to have more of these Marvel Cinematic movies. We're going to have Power Rangers, which itself wants to spin off into a franchise. We don't know how that's going to work yet since the movie's not out yet. And so I want to focus on like the spectacular failures, or the movies that did want to be made into a franchise, but, fell flat on its face the moment, they left the starting gate. So, to start this off, what are some of the movies...
I think the most spectacular franchise failure of recent memory is probably the planned Sony Spider-Verse.
Right. Yeah.
Even though they did have one successful movie under their belt, they like way overplanned, and then when that second movie failed, it just all fell to shit.
Right.
Confused about Amazing Spider-Man 2. That movie made its money back though, didn't it?
Technically, yes, but it didn't made as much money. And the thing was, the problem was the critical backlash from both the press and the fans themselves. Because sure, they paid to see number 2. But are they going to stick around for number 3? Probably not. So this is why they want to go ahead and, try to restart Spider-Man from the ground up with Marvel Studios. Kind of like what happened with Man of Steel. Man of Steel, it was technically a success, but it wasn't the big major success that they were hoping for. They were hoping for like the majority of people to love it as much as The Dark Knight. But obviously that didn't help. It was very 50-50. And so they said, okay, we got to go back to the drawing board. So instead of Man of Steel 2, let's throw Batman into the mix and see what happens. And then Batman v Superman came out. So then once again, they had to go to the drawing board and find a new set of people to run the show.
Yeah. They're kind of making a similar mistake to what Sony made with the Spider-Man movies, I feel. In that, they saw Marvel do this thing where they were setting up future movies in their current movies and like planning all this shit way ahead of time, and they thought, oh cool, that's great, let's do that. But they like try really too hard. So the problem with Amazing Spider-Man 2, or one of the major problems, is that they tried to shoehorn in all of this setup, and it just doesn't work. It feels like they took a bunch of different scripts and stapled them together and said, go shoot this is the movie.
Yeah. Especially since the funny thing with the Amazing Spider-Man series was that it was one of the first Spider-Man, or one of the first movies I started following, like the production I've started following from its very first announcement. I think maybe the first movie for me was maybe Godzilla 2014, back when it was announced in like 2009, I want to say. But with Spider-Man, it was very interesting looking at the evolution of that production, because back then they want to have that movie be a very cheap or a cheaper high school romance type of film, similar to that of Twilight, which was popular at the time. But then eventually some more people came in, they put their hands, and it was a case of having too many hands in the cookie jar, to where you got people saying, oh, let's make it cheaper, let's have it more low key, let's focus on high school. And then other people said, no, we got to make it a big summer blockbuster action movie. And then other people came in and said, no, let's make it, we gotta set this shit up for future movies. Let's put the whole angle, let's put the whole spin on what really happened to Spider-Man's parents. And so, yeah, like Dylan said, there's a very mishmash of multiple plot lines and different ideas. And you can really tell, like, while I did initially like The Amazing Spider-Man, upon my second viewing, I started noticing how it felt very disjointed as a film, as a narrative, because you can tell, you can almost see the stitches where certain plot lines end and others begin, where some characters that were supposed to be important suddenly disappeared from the movie, and the focus was shifted onto other characters. I'm not sure if did you guys have the same feeling?
Well,
yeah, pretty much. Not so much from the first movie, but I can definitely see that, but definitely from the second movie. The second movie felt like 2 or 3 different movies that got edited together clumsily. Like it was just bad. I mean, I remember sitting there in the theater and thinking, my God. And I'm usually pretty easy to dupe when I'm sitting in the theater. Like it usually takes a repeat viewing for me to like point out a lot of flaws in a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this was an example of, I was just sitting in the theater like, God, like this is so many movies in one. And, like, can you just make one of them? Like, can we focus on making one of them? Mm-hmm. There was a similar problem in BVS with the setup that they were trying to do in that movie, with all the dream sequences, and then the email, which is one of the stupidest plot devices I've ever seen.
Right.
It's like, can you just focus on making this movie first, and then maybe. And it's because, like I said, it's because Marvel did it successfully, so now everybody's trying to copy it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the problem with the current landscape, is that Marvel really changed the game on like how you set up a franchise. Because used to, you made a movie, and if it was successful, then you would make some more movies, and then you got a franchise. Not how it works at all anymore. Now you go in with like a 10-movie plan, And maybe if you're lucky, half of them will be okay.
Mm-hmm. And your thoughts, David?
Picking up on what Dylan just said, I think half of the reason why these films are mostly successful because DC is not stopping their cinematic universe right now, despite the mixed reviews for.
I think they've already poured. I think they've already poured too much money at this point to stop.
Right.
Well, and one thing that these movies do have going for them is they are making money. And despite the fact that the majority of people haven't been receiving them very well, there is also, though, a huge group of people who actually have been enjoying the current DC movies. So at this rate, it's still feasible for them to continue making them. So they
most of these movies get their money back from China because apparently the Hollywood films are really popular there.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's a whole other problem. Trying to appeal to the international market, specifically China.
Yeah, and that's such a mixed bag. Like there are good things that come out of that. Like we never would have got Donnie Yen in a Star Wars movie, I don't think, if it hadn't been for us trying to market to China.
Mm-hmm. But
at the same time, you also get like, oh, we're never going to stop making Transformers movies because they haven't caught on to that shit yet.
Mm-hmm. And but the thing is, with BBS and Man of Steel, that is example of trying to pull off the franchise unsuccessfully. But at least at least we can still say that cinematic franchise is still technically going on. With the Amazing Spider-Man series, as you guys mentioned, it was kind of dead in the water by the second installment, where all the problems from the first movie were enhanced greatly in the second one, and obviously nobody liked it.
I went into the second Amazing Spider-Man movie wanting it to be good because I was really interested in that Sinister Six movie idea that they were floating around.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you think you would have ended up with like. Mm-hmm. You think they would have ended up with a movie like I almost said Sinister Squad, which is which is the Asylum ripoff of Suicide Squad. Do you think we would have ended up with a movie like Suicide Squad had we gotten that Sinister Six movie?
I don't know.
So. I think
so because
Suicide Squad got made because of Guardians of the Galaxy, no?
Right. It was very, very much so trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy. And kind of failing at it.
Marvel also has a team of like former supervillains who turn good, called I think it's the Thunderbolts. They should totally make a movie out of that and just one up DC, like the ultimate middle finger. Like, look, we basically made Suicide Squad again, but it's good. Look at this. Look at it.
Yeah. So I guess moving a little bit away from Spider-Man, what are some other examples of failed movie franchises that comes to mind for you guys?
TriStar's Godzilla.
That is very true. Yeah. Funny enough, that was like before.
That's what to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Funny enough, that was before the whole cinematic franchise got popular, but yeah, you can obviously tell that they wanted to make Godzilla into the next franchise, considering how Godzilla already is a gargantuan franchise, and Godzilla already kind of kickstarted its own cinematic universe by having a bunch of monster movies, and then putting them all together into the Godzilla series. Although that wasn't so much planned, that was just kind of done off the cuff. But with TriStar's Godzilla, they said, okay, we have all this source material, we have all these monsters, everyone knows Godzilla, everyone knows all the crazy shit that happens in Godzilla movies, let's try doing all of that in America. And yeah, Godzilla pretty much fell. And like Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that was a movie that was technically financially successful, but the majority of people didn't like it, and so Sony decided, okay, let's wait on it. And outside of the cartoon and a couple toys, they ended up like letting the rights expire. The international rights went back to Toho.
Yeah, I think the one really cool thing about the whole TriStar Godzilla debacle, though, is that even though we got a really shitty adaptation, we also got like the only good Godzilla cartoon as of yet. So
true.
That was a nice little byproduct.
Yeah, very ironic how very strange way how history works. And now we have Godzilla trying to create its own, like, Legendary Pictures creating their own Godzilla cinematic universe, now officially dubbed the Monsterverse. And we're one movie in, and so far it seems like they're kind of on the right track. I mean, yet Godzilla was technically a success and was liked for the most part, and it looks like they're kind of restructuring, or Warner Brothers or Legendary, they're restructuring the kind of like the inner workings of its production house. You know, they got like a new act. It looks like they're going in a new direction with the franchise. They got a more action-oriented monster movie with Kong Skull Island. They got a new lead act. They have a new actress, a new director, new writer. And so I guess it is a chance where this is one of those chances where they paid attention to the backlash against Godzilla 2014 and are looking to correct that, hopefully.
Yeah, didn't the producer also leave?
Yeah, I believe so. And I'm wondering if there's anyone else who is still attached from the first movie.
Yeah, a bunch of people. Thomas Tull is still even though he stepped down from Legendary, he's still producing the rest of the MonsterVerse movies.
Okay.
Alex Garcia got promoted to a producer.
Okay, and what was he before?
He was just an executive producer, so he wasn't doing a lot. And now he's completely overseeing the writers' room for the MonsterVerse.
Okay.
And Mary Parent is still producing the rest of the films along with everyone else.
Okay. And is Yoshimitsu Banno still one of the executive producers?
No, I think that was only for Godzilla 2014.
Ah, interesting. So, let's see. In terms of other cinematic movies that want to be cinematic movies, the one that kind of started this idea in my brain was the Spawn movie, because I think Spawn is one of those interesting failures within the entertainment industry, because Spawn during the 90s was
in every format.
In every format, yes, because Spawn the thing that always fascinated me about the character of Spawn is that he had the potential to be one of the most popular things in like the comic book world, and oddly, where it's like he's a character it's like a very basic story where a guy makes a Faustian deal with the devil and gets screwed over, and so now he has to redeem himself and find out what to do with his life and how to fix his mistakes while essentially being a superpowered zombie man. And just
isn't that the plot of Ghost Rider?
Yeah, I was about to say the problem is that entire premise is just ripped off from Ghost Rider, and some might argue that Ghost Rider might have ripped it off from Devilman, because I looked at those dates and I was like, oh.
Yeah, like it's a very classic story. Originality aside, even though Spawn is essentially Ghost Rider with Venom's suit and a cape. And magical green powers. And
between the two, I prefer Spawn.
And the thing is, like, people loved Spawn. It was like the 90s. People loved that dark yet gritty yet colorful style. The costume. I think people fell more in love with the art than they did with the story itself, because for me personally, I've read like the first 125 issues of Spawn, like after downloading them online like years ago, before Captain Logan from Geekvolution started Spawn Year. And the book is a mess with retcon after retcon after retcon, inconsistent character motivations. Spawn himself is a completely unlikable dick of a character. The mythos makes no sense whatsoever, because again, they keep changing the rules, and Todd McFarlane, he's like, oh, I'm gonna put Spawn in a new direction, even though it's just the same boring direction. So that was it. It was a thing where the concept itself was brilliant, the world itself was fascinating, the costume, it's iconic, it had the potential to be an iconic character. And people today still look fondly on Spawn, but again, I think people still like him based on his design than the actual story. But
I think you're on something there, because that movie didn't do so well.
Right, that was like the point. I think the Spawn.
I think there was I think there was an animated series, wasn't there, that also kind of flopped around on the table.
Yeah.
But one thing I do remember But one thing I do remember being very popular Spawn-wise in terms of merch was fucking like figures. Like Spawn figures were kind of, those things went like hotcakes. So I think you're onto something about people really just kind of liking the way he looked. And nothing really beyond.
And it's no surprise that Spawn toys were the most successful out of all the other ventures, because with Spawn toys you don't need to tell a story. And
yeah, really.
and, although ironically, the early Spawn toys, they actually came with comic books that were attached to the back of the packaging. And what's really cool about the Spawn comics is that they like really streamlined the story, so they were actually better written than the actual comics themselves. And they would say, okay, this Spawn guy actually looks like an actual decent character I want to follow. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Said nobody ever.
Well, see, that's what happened.
Oh yeah,
Bill.
Hi everybody. I decided to make a surprise appearance. So I don't know what they said about me before. All lies, I assure you.
Just that you were
I was at a party,
so.
And I didn't stay long. I wasn't feeling too hot, to be honest, but I had Skype open and I saw that Andres added me when I got home, so I figured I'd stop in and say hi and you know,
and bye,
because this is my channel after all. So
here's the actual story. You got kicked out of the party.
No, not exactly, but no, I'm not feeling great at the moment. You know, I drank a little bit. You know, I maybe took part in some recreational other stuff. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling great. I'm not really feeling this tonight, and I came home. And I may or may not have thrown up when I got home. But you know, that's beside the point. Now I'm here. And this is not an episode of Through the Shot Glass, so I don't know how long I'm going to stay. Probably not for the whole time, because I'm you know, again, not feeling great. But Andres, take the reins and continue whatever the fuck discussion you guys were having.
All right, wasn't this a story? Wasn't this like a story where, like, this is like, I'm Tim Drake, not Tim Drake, I'm Dick Grayson, now becoming Batman and starting my own thing. Well, you, the original Batman, comes back, but now you're just gonna go off eventually and start Batman Inc., which is just going to be your vomiting session.
Oh, you were still talking about me. I thought you were continuing on with whatever story you were talking about.
No, I was just trying to draw parallels. Where it's like, you're back, but I'm still going to be hosting it technically.
Oh, definitely, yeah. For sure. You are Azrael right now. As I mentioned, I'm not feeling good and I'm pretty fucked up, so excuse my slow timing.
It's all right.
But yeah, you are definitely the 90s extreme Azrael in the armor that it was totally unnecessary with the chains and everything. Whatever the hell Azrael had that he did not need. And thankfully we got rid of that pretty quickly. So thankfully we'll get rid of you pretty quickly at the end of this, and I'll be back next week and proper. So Andres, go on. This has probably been a million times better than whatever the hell we do the rest of the time.
I guess to catch you up to speed, we're talking about failed movie franchises, and we talked about.
No, don't worry about it. Just continue, right. and I will use context clues.
Okay, so we were talking about
basically to sum up, isn't Spawn garbage? And that's pretty much been it.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I'm looking at a Spawn toy right now, and that may be a cool looking toy, but in my heart, I'm like, man, that is a shit thing that has no real reason to exist.
Other than to sell toys.
No, that's not true. That's unfair.
Awesome.
That's really unfair.
Yeah.
That's really unfair. There is good stuff from Spawn. That's really unfair. The animated series I always liked.
Yeah,
you know.
the thing was with we were talking about like failed movie franchises, and Spawn I think is a perfect one because it's not only a failed movie franchise, but it's a failed franchise in total, because the comic itself, again, had potential and, you know, just constantly shooting itself in the foot, and then having to retcon that foot shooting afterwards, and only to lead to another foot getting shot.
Well, what we see with Spawn is the beauty and the hideousness of creator-owned comics, where we see people really getting to just run these things into the ground because they have the right to. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have a big multi-million-dollar corporation deciding the fate of these characters, odds are, at the end of the day, whatever they produce will probably be fine because they have millions of dollars staked in it.
And I guess
that's not always true.
And they're kind of more focused on what will actually be good enough to sell to customers.
Look at the Star Wars franchise as of now. I don't think we will ever see a Star Wars movie as bad as the prequels ever again, because Disney will not let it happen. They might put out one that is you know, isn't popular, maybe one that is disliked by critics and fans. But I don't think it'll be something that you can look at and go, man, that is just a train wreck on every level, and it's hilarious how much of a train wreck it is. Because I don't think, because of the way Disney operates, that that's really realistic.
Uh-huh. And yeah, I can see that being
as opposed to Spawn, when George Lucas owned Star Wars, when he could just run it into the ground because it's his billions of dollars that are at stake. And in Spawn's case, it is not billions of dollars, kids. It's like a couple thousand.
And with Spawn, like the television series, I love the first season. The first season is pretty much like the epitome of what you can do with that character. The only problem was, for whatever reason, season 2 took a huge nosedive in terms of pacing and likability with its main protagonist, and constantly going back on character, like retreading character development. And then season 3 was kind of going to an interesting direction, but then they cut it off for whatever reason. I guess it was at that point where Spawn started to become less popular. And then we have the movie, where, oh boy, was that movie was a thing. It was trying to, I guess Spawn the movie was trying to do a lot of what was popular at the time, and trying to focus on visuals, trying to bring in a lot of big names. What was the actor's name? Spawn's actor's name. I know he was Black Dynamite.
Martin Sheen?
No, not Martin Sheen. Guy Courtney?
I didn't hear you say Michael J. White, yeah.
Michael J. White. Okay, Michael J. White, yeah. So they were he was kind of a new name.
Not J, not like it's Michael J. and Silent Bob. No, it's Michael J. White.
Michael J. White, okay. And
what a terrible name.
And
not a great name, you're right. So, by the way, hi, D.
By the way, David is here too, Bill.
I know. I knew he was here. I smelt him from a mile away.
You smelled his French fried greasy fingers.
Yes, I did. Not from a mile away. I smelt it from however far it's between Long Island and Vegas.
What was that, David?
I said he smelled the dank meme bills that I was creating.
Yeah. Those are getting a little out of hand.
Smell that dankness.
Yeah, I see. There, as I said in another podcast recently, there's a line between dank and rank, and I think that the dank Bill memes are starting to need to be called the rank Bill memes. Because some of them I just look at and I'm like, this looks like when you go into like a serial killer gallery, and like there's just drawings on the wall that are smeared in shit. And you kind of look at them and you're like, oh, I see vague human shapes in there, and then you go, yeah, but this was made by a serial killer, though. That's how it feels sometimes when I look at the Tank Bill memes.
It gives me great pleasure that they make you feel that way, Bill.
You know what? Then I guess job well done. Job well done.
God damn it!
So I guess going back to Spawn in terms of rankness. So with the Spawn movie, that was kind of like the point where people stopped giving a shit about Spawn, I think. Because once the movie came out, it was kind of, even though it technically made money, but it had to make its money back through its international release. But it was at this point, nobody was interested in the Spawn movie, and so that's when its popularity started to die down in the minds of everyone except Todd McFarlane, who still thinks there's a chance for Spawn to be relevant to this day. Why do you think the Spawn movie did not work with audiences back then, guys?
I mean, it's a pretty shitty movie. I think that's probably the reason.
There was a time in my life where I watched it every day.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the summer of 2008.
'Twas the summer of 89.
It was not the summer of 89.
99, sorry.
It was a zygote. I was a zygote at that point. Not even that. I was cum. I was just cum and an egg. I was split into two. I was like I was like the two Zamasus in the Black Goku saga.
Also, fun fact, Bill, not Bryan Adams, as it turns out. So
I'm not Bryan Adams. Oh no, probably not.
And now,
damn.
I said probably not. Like, I mean, I don't know for sure. I could be in a limitless universe. I could be Bryan Adams, but odds are I'm not Bryan Adams. See, that's the window you got to leave, kids.
Mm-hmm. And so nowadays, Todd McFarlane keeps talking about wanting to kickstart Spawn again, wanting to make a new movie, and he keeps coming every year. He's like, I'm going to make the Spawn movie. It's going to be made. I'm writing the script now. Next year. Oh, I'm almost done with the script. Next year. I think I'm finished with the script. And then he keeps saying like, oh, I'm going to make a darker, grittier movie. Spawn's not going to be the main character. Is going to focus on two cops from the comics called Sam and Twitch. Do you think this movie is ever going to get made, guys?
No, the best he could probably hope for is, here's my pitch for how you could maybe save this franchise. Do like a web series. Like maybe if you're lucky you can get it on Netflix. If not, maybe somewhere else. But for the love of God, somebody else write it is what needs to happen.
Yeah, he's like, he's like, I'll direct it even if nobody wants to. It's like, no.
You know who he's like? He's like Rob Liefeld, except Rob Liefeld had other people come along later and make his character popular. Mm-hmm. So now he actually has like a good movie based on his character under his belt, and he's got like a big head about it now. And he's like, oh yeah, I fucking created Deadpool. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't make him good. Point being, he's like the failed Rob Liefeld, which is saying a lot.
Right, which is really sad because back then in the 90s he was the successful Rob Liefeld.
Right. They were both around the same level. Is the thing. Right. It's just one of them had a cooler character design, and so people were like, I'm going to buy that toy. And then that was about as far as it went.
Right. Like, what do you like? Ghost Rider with Venom suit or muscle pound guy with giant guns and shoulder pads and pouches?
Both reflect Ghost Rider in different periods, though. That's the interesting thing about that analogy right there.
So,
just all of them. Like, ugh. So many.
Since you haven't talked in a while, David, what do you think there's a chance for a new Spawn movie to get made, or is it dead in the water?
Maybe because it's been like close to 10 years since he announced that he was gonna do a reboot.
Right.
I mean, he could like Dylan said, he could possibly get it off the ground at Netflix because apparently Netflix really wants to do original content, and Apple apparently wants to do original content with whatever division of theirs is making movies and TV shows.
Oh, and so Amazon wants to do something.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a possibility of that. I mean, before I would have said, "Oh no, that's dead in the water," because he's the only one interested in doing it. But since we live in the age of superhero movies and Netflix and all that stuff, there's a major possibility that this reboot might happen. And I kind of want it to happen because I'm a big fan of the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like he could probably finish what he started with that show, the HBO animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there's so much more to explore with that show. But yeah, I feel like, a Spawn TV show, whether it's live action or animated, is probably relevant now, politically and socially. So, I mean, some producer could see that and pick that up either at Netflix or Amazon or wherever.
Mm-hmm. Also,
so yeah, I believe that
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say.
No, I finished.
All right. Do you think Hellboy kind of stole this Spawn's thunder in being like the popular character from Hell superhero?
Hellboy is an interesting situation because we're talking about this whole failed franchise thing. It isn't necessarily a failed franchise. I mean, there are 2 movies done, and he wants to make the 3rd one. But he has to fight tooth and claw to get any of them made. Right. And I don't understand why, because they were popular, weren't they?
And he's Guillermo. He's Guillermo del Toro. He makes a living off of producing a shit ton of stuff.
Yeah, like he's. Well, it's like his lifelong mission is just to get this movie made, and at this point, it's like I don't know if they're ever going to let him. It's weird.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's a failed franchise, but it's certainly a struggling one.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the supernatural, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Reason I think you could possibly maybe pull off Spawn like through the web, either on Netflix or something like that, is look what happened with Mortal Kombat. Okay, Mortal Kombat, beloved video game franchise. The movie, while people like me love it, ironically, is not necessarily remembered for being a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then more recently we had the web series Mortal Kombat. I think it's called Legacy, and I've seen some of that, and it's pretty good. And then people really like it. And it's out on Blu-ray. You can fucking buy it now. Like it was successful. So now that was a success, I could maybe see somebody greenlighting another one or something. Like, you know, the franchise is alive and cinematically now because they did something online. I think you could potentially pull that off with Spawn as well. Maybe.
And,
as long as somebody else.
And since you were talking about a video game movie, what do you guys think of the Super Mario Brothers movie? Because that was the movie that wanted to be a franchise. I mean, they went so far as to put an actual cliffhanger at the very end, hoping that they can make more movies. But that was probably one of the most spectacular messes. In fact, I've seen a video online. I forgot who. I think it was the Gaming Historian channel that made an entire video about the production of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and the story behind that, the making of that movie, is probably enough to be made into a movie itself, or at least a documentary. So that was a movie where they wanted to make. I think it was kind of like one of the first. I think it was one of the first big video game movies at the time, and that just went off in a completely different direction that satisfied nobody, and so we only look at it now as like a complete joke. And I guess, would you say that the Super Mario Brothers movie kind of ended scarring the reputation of future video game movies to come?
They were always doomed.
I don't think it was solely to blame. You had a bad run in the 90s. You know, you had your Mario Brothers, you had your Street Fighter. Again, you had Mortal Kombat, which wound up finding an audience, but it's not considered really a good movie. It's probably the best example on this list, but still, you know what I mean? It's in that sort of gray area between good and bad that we all like to hang out in from time to time. So it's just, they had a bad run, and like here more recently they've been trying to get it right, and they're still failing. What was your Warcrafts and your the other one, your Assassin's Creed movies?
Oh yeah, even to this day.
So eventually maybe they'll get it right, because I mean comic book movies went through a similar thing. They used to be god awful most of the time.
Yeah, and we're still like, I think like a lot of fans are like, will happen eventually. Maybe this will be the year for video game movies. Oh, okay. Maybe next year it'll be the year for video game movies. Maybe the year after that. Hopefully.
Yeah. Now comic book movies are only god awful half of the time, so maybe there's hope for video games.
Yeah.
It's a shame too, because I was actually having some hope for Warcraft and Assassin's Creed. I haven't seen Assassin's Creed yet, but I heard, terrible things.
And let's see. Oh, another big one comes to mind in terms of movies that wanted to be made into franchise was the last year's Ghostbusters film.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're still proceeding with that though, aren't they?
They keep fighting tooth and nail to deny the rumors that it's not going to happen. They're like, it's going to happen. And like Paul Feig, the movie is a complete and total bomb, but like the producers and Paul Feig, they keep like refusing to accept the fact that it's a bomb and that the majority of people were unimpressed with it. But it's like, no, it's still a success in my eyes, even if it didn't made money. I see children that come to me and they told me they were inspired by the movie. That shows me that it's still a success in my eyes. They're trying to spin this narrative that they're like trying to win a losing battle in an attempt to like look good in the eyes of the public, but it just comes off as sad and pathetic as a way of trying to continue this dead franchise.
I mean, it's cool if that's true. I mean, like if that happened, great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean, this was not a success, just in a general sense. But more than that, if you fail to emotionally resonate with the populace, you need to address the problem rather than trying to dance around it. But I mean, what else are they gonna do?
I find that approach even more annoying. Like, I find that whole attitude, well, it's a success in my eyes. I find that even more annoying than, like, Michael Bay's approach to things. Because I get the feeling Michael Bay knows he's making schlock. He just doesn't give a fuck because he's raking in all that money. And I can respect that, I understand that motivation.
But you can't respect people being happy they made an impact on people.
No.
Kind of like the filmmakers of Suicide were like, oh, we made it for the fans, so it doesn't matter what the critics say.
The filmmakers of Suicide. So the people who created the idea of Suicide, they're like, we made this for the fans.
For fans of Suicide.
Suicide Squad. I said Suicide Squad.
Maybe
you didn't.
Maybe he meant the Asylum Sinister Squad.
saying, "Oh, the critics, everybody hated my movie, but that's okay because I still think it's good," is like being one of those like annoying like parents who like join one of those leagues where like you sign your kid up for a sport and everybody gets a reward even if they didn't win. It's bullshit.
A participation award.
Kind
Okay,
of
that's fine.
just for showing up.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, but by the same token, I think it's a little like I think you're a little fucking like. I think we need to allow people to have some fucking credit to go. Well, if the movie did have some impact on people, that's cool, and that means that I'm proud of it. I think that that's totally fine in filmmaking because that's really what it is going to be for in the long run. The movie's out on DVD already. I mean, it fucked the box office numbers, fuck the critical reception. That's all in the background.
Apparently,
I hated it too. I fucking hate that movie more than I hated BVS. But
so, was it worse than Ghostbusters 2?
I don't care. Yes, but I don't care though. Like however they feel about it now. In no way impacts the fact that I hated it. Like that has nothing to do with it. I hate that movie because the experience I had with it was hate filled. But if they're proud of it, I mean they should be. They made it. Like I have no respect for somebody who completely backs down from something they made. I mean I mean not to admit your mistakes. That's something else. But to completely go, oh, this is an irredeemable piece of shit. It's like, well, I think you're even then being unrealistic about the thing that you made because I mean it's not like you still did something here. I mean you still made some impact on people. So I think that I would have to stand not to be like a fucking hippy dippy fucking ranter right now, but just I think that's totally fair.
Bill.
No, but like
Bill.
It's like recently the fucking screenwriter behind Dragon Ball Evolution came out and was like, you know what, I fucked up. Like I gained a lot of respect for that man, like immediately.
Bill, could you make the same argument for Yeti: A Love Story?
Sure, I love those dudes. I mean, the way they responded to my review, I was so touched by that. I was like, oh my god, that's great. Not touched in the way that they reflect in the film, by the way.
At least they didn't pull a Derek Savage and tried to get your review of his movie taken down.
Andres, do not even speak.
Wait. Somebody tried to do that to me and I didn't. Wait, hang on. Andres, did somebody try to do that to me and I didn't realize it?
No. I'm saying just be glad you didn't have a Derek Savage situation where people reviewed his movie and he tried to get all reviews of his movie taken down.
He does that to everybody else. Don't even speak his name, Andres, or else this podcast might get taken down. God,
right, true.
What are you thinking? Be the host. You're supposed to think about these things.
How could he do this to us? I thought Cool Cat was supposed to promote not bullying and shit like that. But anyway,
that is one. That's one thing I won't be hippy dippy about. Enough with the ranting and raving about the bullying on the internet. That's what the internet's for. Deal with it. If anybody doesn't think that, you're wrong, and you just have to accept it.
Wrong.
If you're gonna play, I'm with Trump on that one. Wrong. If you're gonna play on the internet, you gotta play by the big boy rules. You gotta be willing to take some shit. That's how I've developed the thick skin that I now have over the course of my YouTube careers. Because I mean, when you put yourself out there on the internet, fuck, you take some shit, son.
So much cancer. But getting back on,
I mean, we've all taken a dick before. And Andres, I'm sorry to keep cutting you off, but I really am. Again, I'm sorry, guys. I just kind of erupted into the middle of this thing and kind of fucked up the flow.
It's your channel. We're used to it by now.
I think that the key here with the internet and with rebooting franchises and with just all this failure and commercially and critically and just populace-wise, pop culturally, with franchises and people's careers and everything, I think it's all just a matter of that's how people are. And the constant struggle between trying to resonate with people who will have a positive reaction to something like that is the real struggle. And that's what people struggle to find. People struggle to find their audience. That's the struggle of any and all artists. And what you more often find, because it's so much, not only is it so much simpler, that it's also so much more fun to just rip somebody a new asshole and fucking dig into somebody's crap. Because God, it's fun, ain't it, boys? Oh, I love ripping somebody a new asshole.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Why do you think we made this podcast?
All you and I do is watch bad monster movies and go, oh, look at these fuck ups. Isn't this wonderful?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they still put themselves out there.
Ape's a bad movie, you guys.
Oh, Ape is real bad, yeah. Not as bad as Q, though, I think. I actually liked it better than Q, but I mean, we didn't finish it yet, to be fair.
That's true.
We only got an hour into that one, because I was mad tired. But anyway, but Ape and Q and everything, they put themselves out there to find their audience, and D and I are just a couple of people who looked at that thing and went, fuck this. But we still had a good time with it. So I think, if anything, we're more of an audience than your average person who would watch that movie and just say fuck this in the first 10 minutes and not finish it. Mm. And we finished it and appreciated our feeling of fuck this. And I think that those three parts of the spectrum, the positivity, the fuck this, but oh my god, this is fascinating, and just the general fuck this, is the spectrum that everybody has to navigate. And the franchises that you guys have probably discussed so far and will continue to discuss are flowing around that spectrum. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's just always what has to be in the forefront of everybody's minds when discussing stuff like this, because I think that it makes for a much more compelling and desirable outcome for when we see stuff in the future. Mm-hmm. So what's the next?
What's that? If I might shift the conversation a bit here. Mm-hmm. Everything we've talked about so far in terms of failed franchises are franchises that failed because the movies were garbage, which is kind of a no shit Sherlock situation. Nobody's surprised that Avatar: The Last Airbender never got a sequel. What I find more interesting and much more frustrating is when a really good movie just doesn't perform well, and then you have the potential for a franchise just wasted away. Like I think the biggest example that everyone can think about is fucking Dredd.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, because that emotionally resonated with people, but not enough.
Yeah, it didn't make the money. It was the opposite situation of what we've been discussing. It didn't make the money, but everybody fucking loved it.
I remember when they were showing the trailers in Comic-Con, I believe. That was when the first trailers came out.
And people were responding well to it, right? It struck a chord with everybody. It just didn't make that dough. So I guess technically it didn't strike a chord with everybody. It didn't strike a chord with the checkbook. So.
And I guess Pacific Rim was almost like that as well, where it was a movie that was generally well liked by people who are fans of that type of genre, that subgenre of science fiction, and only now, 4 years later, are we barely starting to get Pacific Rim 2 getting made right now.
Yeah, we really lucked up with Pacific Rim because it was about to be the next Dredd. You remember for a while, the sequel thing was not looking very likely. Luckily, I think ultimately the reason they decided to give it another shot is that word of mouth in America was mostly, mixed to positive, and it did, do pretty well overseas. So I think those two elements put together was enough for them to take a chance on making a sequel, luckily. So we're going to get at least two of them out of this.
I also think the success of Godzilla saved Pacific Rim 2. And I think that Legendary knows that if they popularize the big monster movie genre again by making quality reboots to franchises that people know, Godzilla and King Kong, I think that they know that people will flock to this more offbeat take on the genre. Because I think the problem is we just haven't had a really good giant monster movie in a long time, and when Pacific Rim came out, people weren't sure what to make of it. Because it's not just a straight monster movie. That's why I was always like, oh, don't cross over Godzilla and Pacific Rim. Because Pacific Rim is a riff on Godzilla, and it will be ridiculous and unnecessary to put Godzilla in that world.
I think I made the comparison with you, Bill, years ago, where it's like trying to cross over Star Wars with Spaceballs.
Yes, exactly. Not to that crazy extent,
right?
But that's a pretty good mark.
Or Star Trek with Galaxy Quest.
That's perfect. That's a perfect. That's even better than Spaceballs
or Planet of the Apes with Time of the Apes.
Because Galaxy Quest isn't that absurd of a universe. The absurdity of that movie comes from the people who are thrown into that situation. Whereas Spaceballs is, it's absurdist. It's Mel Brooks. Galaxy Quest is Ghostbusters, and Spaceballs is
I mean, it's like Young Frankenstein. It's a farce.
Mm-hmm. Now,
God, I wish Galaxy Quest. Why didn't we ever get a sequel to did that movie do well financially? I know it's beloved among people, but
No, it did not.
Now, you mentioned before of a great movie like Dread, Dylan, and I want to bring up two movies that were not great, but were passable, at least in my opinion. But these were movies that were big bombs, and these were movies that were trying to find an audience. Like you mentioned earlier before, Bill, that movies need to find their audience, and for these movies, I don't even know who they were trying to find, who was supposed to be the audience for these movies, and that were ironically both from Disney, The Lone Ranger and John Carter. Both of them were adaptations of older characters, trying to make them for a new generation, I think, and they were trying to ride off the success of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, going so far as to get the producer.
That always makes me really sad.
Trying to get like the producer and the director of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Jeremy Bruckheimer, I believe his name was, to work on the Lone Ranger film. And it was funny. I think the Lone Ranger. Yeah.
John Carter was a weird example because John Carter, the book, inspired so many of the things that are popular now in film, but they waited too long to adapt the source material. So you have all this stuff that's in our zeitgeist that's at least partially inspired by what happened in the book John Carter, and then by the time they get around to making the adaptation of the book, it feels like they're ripping off those things that it actually inspired in the first place. It's weird. It was a really bizarre situation. The Lone Ranger, on the other hand, that's have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I reviewed it.
I have not. I haven't.
It's okay.
Save yourself a very long sit and a headache and just watch the trailer again, because all the best stuff.
It's too long of a movie. A western like that of that small scale did not need to be like 2 hours or 2.5 hours long.
I just didn't see it because of the bad word of mouth, which is what kills most things.
Helena Bonham Carter has like a Gatling gun for a leg. That's kind of cool. The rest of the good stuff is in the trailer.
She really didn't serve a purpose, I think. She was just someone to get information from.
She was just there because
it's Helena Bonham Carter.
I guess because Johnny Depp was there. I don't think this is a Tim Burton movie.
No, it wasn't a Tim Burton movie, but I guess Johnny Depp was like, "Oh, I know someone who can help us."
Yeah.
I know someone who can give us star power, someone who can give us a female face to slap on to the poster saying, "Hey, look at us. We're being diverse."
Also, fucking Johnny Depp. What was he doing in this movie? Andres, can you?
He was essentially doing.
Because I can't understand them at all.
I think they were just saying like Johnny Depp is popular for having a goofy character who makes funny faces with Jack Sparrow. Let's have him do the same shtick in another goofy getup. So he's in a goofy character in a goofy getup making goofy faces. So they thought they were trying.
And that's no fun. That's no fun for anybody.
Yeah,
especially Johnny Depp's wife.
Oh boy!
I don't actually know if John Carter is a good or bad movie because I started to watch it once and I didn't get very far in.
What was really funny with Johnny Depp is that like he does the stereotypical Indian accent where he talks in very broken English. Yet everyone else speaks. All the other Native Americans speak normally. Yet he's acting like a cartoon character from a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Crazy black man bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay. Can I pitch out one franchise before I go?
Sure, totally. I only got one more on my list before moving on.
It's in line with what we've been talking about, Frankenstein, and here's why. Nobody knows how to recapture what people like about that story. So we've had a couple attempts in the past few years to revitalize that brand.
Right.
Frankenstein,
and
total disaster.
And Victor Frankenstein, which I actually saw recently.
How is that? I haven't seen that. I never heard anything about it.
It's pretty decent. It's mostly the performances of James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe that carry the movie.
Okay, here's the interesting
thing. Also go back
thing
a
about
little further to the Robert De Niro version from I think the 90s.
And especially Van Helsing's Frankenstein version. Like they were trying to create their own another failed franchise with that. Or was Van Helsing supposed to be a franchise or a one-off movie?
Oh, that was supposed to be a franchise.
Oh,
They
boy.
definitely would have made that franchise. That's from the same people who cooked up those Mummy movies, and look what they did with that.
But hang on, okay. See, but that was at a time where franchise did not mean spin-offs and a million sequels.
No, it just means
meant
sequel.
Yeah. So that,
Yeah,
but
I was
yes,
saying-
definitely.
Said earlier in the podcast, you would make one movie, and if it was successful, then you made another one, and you kept going in that fashion. You didn't plan 8 movies ahead
Yeah,
and
they're
hope
trying.
that they came out okay.
Yeah, they're trying to run before they could crawl, before they can even begin to walk.
And I think that's what we saw a little bit with these last couple Frankenstein movies, which is not even the problem. That's fine. If you want to do Frankenstein in this kind of shared universe as Preston before, I'd love to see it, but do it fucking good. Please. Universal, I don't have any faith in you whatsoever, but whatever. I'm going to see your movies anyway.
I mean, they had to give
garbage.
Universal had to give up Kong in order for there to be another Kong movie.
Thank God. I think that Kong Skull Island will be as good as I think it will be because they gave it to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers was like, yeah, we're not going to really do a prequel as much as just do a King Kong movie, which is fucking delightful. Because that's not what that project is now is not how it was pitched to us when it went into production. It was originally supposed to be a King Kong prequel that I interpreted as like, oh, so this is going to be like before... like set before any like people come to the island. It's not that at all. It's the King Kong story, but it's just told it's just different. It's just modernized. It's just a different spin on it, which I think is a million times more interesting. But anyway, back to Frankenstein. I think that is the thing that we need to realize here. It is not that people love that original book necessarily. I do, but that book is also like fucking over 100 years old. So I love it because I'm a fucking psychopath. So you know that's an accurate reason to like it. But I mean that book is like there's just chapters upon chapters of look at the hills, they're so pretty and green. What? I don't want to read that. I want to read Frankenstein. And I think that is what
abridged version, Bill.
I think that people need to identify that people don't love that original book. They like what that original book was about. And I think that a film needs to recapture that. What I'd love to see, I said this on the last episode or maybe the episode before, what I'd love to see is I'd love to see a modern sequel to the original novel. Don't fuck with anything. Just be like, Frankenstein, that happened, okay?
So like young Frankenstein, but taken seriously?
Yes, and then just have the monster living in the present day.
Frankenstein may be the last good American Frankenstein movie that we've gotten, like really good.
No. Really good? Okay, that's fair. You're absolutely right. I don't hate Kenneth Branagh version.
I think the one with Robert De Niro is decent.
Yeah, it completely falls apart in different areas, but a lot of it's good stuff. But the franchise in general, I think you need to bring the monster into the present day, and instead of trying to make him cool, just show why he's cool in a modern context. That's how you reflect that. You reflect his philosophical nature, his kind of self-awareness, his kind of depression, all that business. So
I think what is a shot-by-shot remake of the Thomas Edison version. And then...
do that design, but in the present day. So listen, make a Frankenstein movie, kids, where he's just doing something cool. Maybe he's a fucking detective in New York and he's solving crimes. That'd be cool.
Isn't that Tyler Soule's Hank Steiner?
I have no idea.
Yeah. One of my friends we met at G-Fest who has the Durantis, the Lost Serpent comic. He has another character called Hank Steiner who is exactly that.
Oh, fuck me. All right, well, fuck it. That guy hasn't made a movie out of it yet. We can steal that and still make the movie, and we can beat him to it. So let's get on that shit. Let's write a script and get it copyrighted before...
there you go. I'm going to send you an image right now.
No, I don't.
No, just to share with you, because it's awesome.
I need to claim legal blindness, Andres, because otherwise, like, this is being recorded.
Damn it, Andres.
I'm trying to help him out.
Yeah. That's a perfect.
First with the Derek Savage, and now with this, Andres. You're supposed to be protecting this brand.
I'm trying to help promote a friend's comic out there. Okay.
Your friend's comic is fucking with our commercial possibilities. We could be making millions on this fucking Frankenstein idea. Fucking making him young and sexy and giving him a V and everything. Like and what I mean by V is like the V when you see a guy who's worked out a lot, like he's got the V on his torso, like it shows like, oh, he really edged that in.
Anyway, Andres, let me tell you, when your friend's on the podcast, then we'll talk about his shit. Right now, we got to remain legally.
Anyway,
Go support Hank Steiner on Comixology.com.
Go do whatever you want with the Frankenstein brand, kids. It's public domain. You can make anything you want with it. That's the beauty of it. So listen.
Yeah.
I'm peacing out. Tired. I'm fucked up.
Okay.
And I need to stop having existential crisis on air. So you kids go on and have fun.
All
Pretend like I wasn't here. Or don't do that. That's mean. But I'll see you guys soon enough. All right.
All right. To quote SpongeBob.
Good night.
To quote SpongeBob, just get out of here, you stupid dumb animal.
Oh wow, I did not need to hear that right now. But all right.
Fun. Wow.
Thanks everyone. I appreciate it.
Now.
Damn, for real.
You can have it anymore.
You can have it. I get nothing from this.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Yeah, you're the fucking podcast Nazi. All right. Good night, everyone.
Andres is like, Bill, I respect you, but my Tommy gun don't.
Oh boy, see you, man. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was I originally wanted to bring up Avatar, but I'm sure like Dylan, he mentioned it in passing, and everyone already knows what a travesty that movie was, considering how great the source material was. And everyone.
At first you thought. First, I thought you were talking about the other Avatar, which is a funny story, because there's a franchise that we're getting that nobody wants anymore.
Right. That's the funny thing. Like, technically, the franchise for James Cameron's Avatar is still in production, and whether we like it or not, all 5 of those movies, or however he's planning to make before he retires. But for The Last Airbender, what I originally meant was, for The Last Airbender, that was clearly trying to be like, okay, let's adapt each season into a movie, and clearly there was too much, was too ambitious of a project to fit an entire season into the first movie, and not only did the movie feel rushed, but it was boring, the action was dull, the characters were dull, the acting was flat. You know, that movie didn't satisfy anyone, and everyone was like, fuck you to this movie, and I'm pretty sure it permanently scarred M. Night Shyamalan's career. I mean, he also made After Earth, which they try to tone down his involvement on the project, because they were trying to say, oh, it's not much of his movie, it's more of Will Smith and his son's movie. But now it looks like he's trying to recuperate from those last 2 movies by focusing on smaller indie projects, I think.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, been given Shyamalama, been given M. Night Shyamalan a lot of shit over the years, but everything I've heard tells me that Split is apparently really good, and the one he did before that was apparently pretty good. So I don't know, maybe he's found the old magic again.
Maybe.
You never know. Another example, kind of similar to Last Airbender, is fucking Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. You could that's a movie with a shit ton of material to work off of into a movie series.
There's so much material in the Dragon Ball universe that you could adapt into films, and it's still expanding to this day. So there's no shortage of things you could do. But my God, was that movie god awful? And then the sequel baiting that they did at the end just made it even more awkward. I really love when a failed franchise had a first movie that set up a sequel at the end. Like
it reminds me of kind of. Oh, sorry. At the end, sorry, go ahead.
98 has the egg sequence at the end.
Yeah.
Bill mentioned that when Bill was on, he mentioned that earlier this week. Me and him had watched Q the Winged Serpent. That has a very similar sequence at the end where there's another egg they didn't know about and it hatches. No sequel to that.
They did a similar thing in.
Oh no, go ahead and tell yours.
Okay. Do you guys have you guys ever heard of the E.T. ripoff Mac and Me?
No, was there a sequel bait in that?
Yeah, there was a point where the family of aliens, because it's like there's a family of creepy ET looking aliens in here. At the very end, they're all driving off in a car, and a cartoon, as the camera pans out to the car driving on the freeway, there's a cartoon speech bubble that comes out of nowhere saying, "We'll be back."
Oh God, one of my favorite examples is the 1980s. Produced by Canon, so that's a good sign. Masters of the Universe movie.
Oh yeah.
which is hilariously bad.
Mhm.
It's just one of my favorite bad movies ever. But after the ending credits, at least they did it after the credits. They had the decency to do it after the credits instead of slapping it on the end of the movie. So the movie wraps up, and then you have the credits. But then after the credits, fucking like Skeletor pops up out of like a vat of lava, and he's like, "I'll be back," and it's like, no,
Next
no, you
time,
won't.
Gadget. Next time. And
I'm so sorry.
That's the final shot of the movie of Mac and Me.
I'm like, poor Frank, like, you were the best part of this movie, but you will not be back. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the last movie I want to bring up was a movie that had a deeper connection to my childhood personally, and that was the movie Aragon, based on the book of the same name, which was... The book itself, Aragon, was the story. It was kind of like a Lord of the Rings with the story template of Star Wars for young children and teenagers, and it came out at the same time I was in elementary school. And the book itself was kind of inspiring for me because everyone was promoting the first Aragon book as saying, oh, this was published by a author who was only 15 years old. And so it was kind of inspiring for me to see someone that young, although in my eyes, 15 used to be pretty old to me as an elementary school student. But to see someone who was that young get something published out there was a very inspiring story for me. And the movie itself was pretty generic, although to be honest, looking back on the source material, even as like in middle school, reading the first two books, I never got around to reading the third and fourth book. Reading the first two books, I kept thinking to myself, this is Star Wars this is Star Wars in a fantasy setting. Well, more fantasy setting than Star Wars itself. So the movie itself, I guess, didn't really work all that well. That and was trying to write off the coattails of like the teen fantasy novels, along with Lord of the Rings. Do you guys ever remember Aragon, both the book and the movie?
I remember it being a thing that existed. I don't know why I never got into it. Like, it seems like something I should have gotten into because I fucking love dragons. You put a dragon in anything, chances are I'll probably watch it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I never got into that one. I remember seeing it and being like, well, that's not Viggo Mortensen. Fuck off. But other than that, yeah, no. Like, I didn't even realize that it was a book until later. I remember seeing the movie and not being interested in that. And maybe if I had been aware of the books beforehand, maybe I would have read them, and then maybe that would have caused me to go see the movie. But no, that's one of those ones that just sort of passed me by.
Okay. I think maybe that was the case for a lot of people. I don't know. Because it seemed to have like came and gone very quickly, and as soon as it was gone, like there was talks about adapting the second book into a movie, but then everyone was like, yeah, let's not do that. Do you remember Avatar Aragon at all, David?
Oh, I remember Avatar, Andres. I saw it 3 times in theaters.
Oh, right.
Unwillingly.
Right. I think you told me in one of our earliest conversations your dad kind of dragged you to see it, and that's when you were like, oh, maybe this ain't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm beginning to think that my dad is the only fan who's asking for Avatar sequels.
My dad is the only one asking for a sequel to Van Helsing.
Oh, my dad, too. My dad loves Van Helsing.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life when I was the only person, it seemed like, who didn't like Avatar. And then over time, people on the internet started souring to it. And I was like, see, I wasn't crazy. It is just dances with wolves in space.
Maybe that's how a lot of people are thinking about Godzilla 2014. A lot of people liked it, but then as time passed, people were like, oh, maybe it's not as good as we thought it was. And a lot of people were like, see, we told you from the beginning.
I've seen that a little bit with Shin, too. But with Shin, it's so weird. Everybody's so up and down on their opinions.
Yeah. But anyways, but yeah, what were your thoughts towards Aragon, David?
I had the same experience with Dylan. I knew it was a thing, but I just didn't care.
Okay.
I knew the movie came out. I knew it was based off a book because I seen it on those scholastic book fairs that
right.
schools.
Yeah,
but it wasn't a franchise that I was interested in.
I had never heard of Aragon, but I had seen the sequel at some of those book fairs.
Well, yeah, the red book with the red dragon, right?
Yeah, I saw that one around, so I knew that was a thing. but I didn't know about the first book, and so I had no idea that like that book I had seen around was the sequel to that movie that was being made. Like I just didn't even connect for me that those were the same franchise. You know.
Right.
I was too busy reading. Goosebumps and Animorphs.
Right. I wonder if it's because they made a Goosebumps movie. I wonder if we'll ever get a resurgence of Animorphs. I mean, we had the TV series on Fox Kids, and we had those horrible toys made by the Transformer guys. Who knows if that will ever see the light of day? But anyways, I think that's about it for for all the movies I wanted to bring up in terms of failed movie franchises. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to bring up before we switch over to David's subject?
Well, no, I think we've covered all the ones that I can think of at this moment.
Okay. And you, David?
None. I think we all said what needed to be said about these failed franchises.
All right then. So I guess moving on. Yep. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I do have a potential idea for Bill franchise.
I guess so.
I even have an idea on how to make movies based on Bill's life without giving him royalties.
You just change the name from Bill to Will, and you're done.
Just
no, you
hire
can't do
Will
that.
Smith.
You can't do that, Andres, because some of his friends call him Will, so you might still be able to call bullshit on him.
Phil. You call him Phil. You gotta call him Phil now.
Phil.
You call him Phil Burster. His name is Phil Burster.
That sounds like a poor name.
We could probably get away with Will. That's not his legal name.
Technically, yeah. Phil Hank Burster.
Yes. Good old FHB.
Yes.
No, PHB.
PHB.
Damn that Phil with weird Spanish. You know what? Fuck it. We'll spell it with an F. It'll be different.
Yes. It'll be French. He's not of German descent. He's French descent now.
And if you spell it with an F, it's even more of a poor name. Oh my.
F Burster. So, I'll let you take over the reins for the rest of the podcast, David.
All right, so I have an obscure film that I've been wanting to talk about for 2 months now, and it's this movie from Japan, a very small, I'm assuming it's an indie movie called Shiki-Jitsu, and it's one of the earliest works of Hideaki Anno.
Uh-huh.
And guess who stars in that movie?
Let's see. Who is a movie that has appeared in Anno's production in the past? I'm gonna guess it's Anno himself.
I'll give you a hint. This person has been in a kaiju tokusatsu movie from the 90s.
No, it's Ayako Fujitani. I totally didn't Google that, by the way.
I don't believe you, but yes, it's Ayako Fujitani.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's this movie about something. Sean Barry made me watch it.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to watch it because
speaking of Sean Murray, he's been making the title card as we speak for this episode.
Sean Murray?
Sorry, Sean Barry.
It's Sean Murray. He's a friend of Phil Burster's, you know. John Murray, I think you mean. John Murray, internet associate of Phil Burster.
It's a cinematic universe. It's a spin-off of Sean Murray. Speaking of cinematic universes, Shiki-Jitsu, which, Andres, correct me if I'm wrong, apparently it means ritual or ceremony in Japanese?
I'm not sure about those two terms in particular, because when it comes to something like Shiki and Jitsu, those are the thing I've come to learn about the Japanese language is that there are certain phrases that can mean a shit ton of things. Like there's like probably 150 different meanings for ki, or a lot of different meanings for dai, a lot of meanings for ma. So
kind of like there could be a whole bunch of different meanings for the word shin.
Yeah, there's a lot of meanings for shin. There's a lot of meanings for like what's another one? Ki. I guess like the simpler the syllable, the more meanings it could have.
This is a terrible method, and I don't recommend anybody use it.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to run this through Google Translate.
Oh
see what
shit!
happens.
At least try to just you should get the kanji. Try to copy and paste the kanjis, not the Roman letters themselves. Kai, that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'm gonna try to run down this movie to the best of my memory. Because
Okay, so
I saw
time
it back
I got
in
the word.
November.
Oh, okay. So I guess it means ritual.
Oh, okay. So
That makes a lot more sense than what Google Translate just told me. According to Google Translate, a Shiki-Jitsu is a graduate student.
Oh, okay. So it says there's two more translations. So it means ritual day or ceremonial day. So ceremony could mean like ritual or ceremony, which they're kind of, if you think about it, they're ritual and ceremony kind of the same thing. There's a vague connection there. So I guess ceremonial day could mean like graduation ceremony. Just made super basic.
Ritual day sounds more appropriate because there is a kind of sort of ritual thing that Ayako Fujitani's character goes through or does in the movie multiple times. And apparently apparently the movie is a semi autobiographical movie based on both Ayako Fujitani and Hideaki Anno. And the reason why I call it a small indie movie is because there's only two principal characters throughout the entire movie.
Oh, okay.
There's only
screen?
On screen, yeah.
Talking.
And that's who we spend time with throughout the rest of the movie.
Oh, okay.
But there's a couple characters here and there, like two more additional supporting characters that only show up once. And that's like, Ayako Fujitani's her character's mother and a friend. That's it. But anyways,
David, do you think it would help? Do you think it would help your explaining of this movie if I just read the this story summary on the Wikipedia page? It's only like 3 very short like
paragraphs.
Not even paragraphs. They're like maybe 2 sentences long each one.
Okay.
Says
right, give it a try.
The film follows a young director returning to his hometown, a suburb of a larger Japanese city, and an eccentric young girl he meets whose quirks include saying tomorrow is my birthday every day and wearing very unusual clothing. But as the days go by, it appears that the woman has little touch with reality and is constantly escaping into a fantasy world. Now tell me if this next part sounds like anybody familiar. While the director himself is a former anime director who is seeking to do a real film and embrace reality. The two eventually fall in love. In the end, the director confronts the woman and her mother, allowing the woman to make the first steps into the real world. The film's end with the girl circling December 7th. That's her real birthday, and the words "beyond the 33rd day unknown," which doesn't make any sense to me, but it is an Anno film. So,
So it's kind of like an opposite.
Yeah, that's basically.
So it's sort of like an opposites attract sort of romance.
Yeah, I mean the first hour is very.
The reason
trippy.
I wanted to read that is that line. The director himself is a former anime director who is seeking to do a real film and embrace reality. Wow, I wonder who he's referring to in this film.
Yeah, the first hour
it's like poetry. It sort of rhymes.
What rhymes with Hideaki Anno?
So anyway, sorry, continue, David.
Well, like I was saying, the first hour of this movie is really, really trippy. But not trippy in a psychedelic way, trippy in a pacing way. Because this movie does have pacing issues, which would explain Shin Godzilla, another live-action movie from Hideaki Anno. And once it gets into the second act, it kind of falls into like a typical love story. But then since this is Hideaki Anno, it eventually turns a complete... it has a 180 turn, and it goes back into that weird, trippy style of the first act. And, well, I just basically described a Hideaki Anno film, so... Yeah.
So does it have any of that, like, commentary sort of, like, social commentary sort of thing that you usually see in Anno's work?
Kinda, sorta. It feels like he's mostly, putting a commentary on himself. Because apparently the movie is based off a short story that Ayako Fujitani wrote while she was in Hollywood with her father, Steven Seagal, during the I think it was like the mid-90s.
Right.
And apparently she was depressed at that time, and somehow Hideaki Anno
I'd be depressed too if Steven Seagal was my father.
Apparently, and I guess apparently Hideaki Anno just turned it into turned the screenplay to reflect both Ayako Fujitani and himself, which I thought was brilliant, because throughout the whole movie I kept on messaging Sean Barry, like, what's this? What's that? What does this mean?
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah, because Sean Barry loves this movie.
Yeah.
Based on the conversations I've had with him.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I love it. I mean, I like it to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it's like, like a must-see. I mean, see it out of curiosity, just to see how Hideaki Anno handles small, independent projects.
Mm-hmm.
Because this seems like a movie any one of us would have made. Andres, you could have made this since you live in Japan.
I just got to go.
Sounds to me like the kind of thing you should check out if you like Hideaki Anno, like specifically. If you're a big Hideaki Anno buff, then this sounds like maybe it's right up your alley.
A Hideaki Anno romance story. It does have an intriguing sound to it.
You're saying you're sickened but curious.
Kind of, sort of, maybe, yeah.
Well, Ayako Fujitani is basically playing not only herself, but basically Shinji Ikari too, because kind
of like the someone who's constantly questioning their self-worth, their own their purpose in this world, sort of like someone who's trying to find like some meaning in life. Yeah,
but imagine if Shinji just had a complete total mental breakdown and we're witnessing him recovering from it.
Okay, so it's kind of a more positive spin than Anno's usual pessimistic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this movie does have a happy ending, which is something that Sean Barry spoiled me very early on. Because, and also Ayako Fujitani's character, the mother, is basically playing a female version of Gendo.
Huh, interesting. Okay, so a type of character that's more like enforcing that type, I guess, like kind of reinforcing the problem, like reinforcing the problems that led to her character's mental breakdown.
Right. And while watching this movie, it kind of got me thinking that Anno is rehashing some of his old ideas, especially from Evangelion. Mm-hmm. And you kind of see some of those a little bit, like small elements of Evangelion in Shin Godzilla. Mm-hmm. Especially with treating Godzilla like an angel, and the fact that his atomic breath looks exactly like the beams that are in every Anno anime.
Right.
So, I gotta ask you guys this. Do you feel like every filmmaker unintentionally rehashes himself or herself?
I think so. Isn't that what we call auteur theory? Where where a director or any sort of artist would always carry similar themes across all of their bodies of work? Because I think, most likely almost every director does that to some degree, whether it's similar patterns, similar character archetypes, similar tones, similar styles of cinematography, narration, pacing, all that good stuff.
Well, while every director, I think, does that to a degree, though, some people it's very apparent with. Mm-hmm. You can see this with another Japanese example. If David hadn't told me that Versus was directed by the same guy who did Godzilla Final Wars, I still might have figured it out. You know what I mean? Obviously, to go to an American example, the obvious one that comes to mind is Tarantino, because everything that he does is so stylized to the point where you can't mistake it for anybody else's work. Or Nolan, who kind of has an opposite thing. He makes everything so sort of grounded, and he has a certain way of writing his characters that you always know that it's him. So certain directors. Well, I do think you're correct that everybody does that to a degree. I think with certain directors, it's way more pronounced, and I would probably put Anno in that category. All I've seen of his is the Evangelion stuff and Shin up to this point. But even still, I can already tell that he's one of those very stylized people, and like you'll know that you're watching one of his things when you're watching it.
Interesting. And so I guess, yeah, go ahead, David.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, if you plan on wrapping your thoughts up on this film, or if there's nothing else left to say, I was gonna ask you, where could we find this film for anyone in our audience interested in checking out this film?
I have a copy of it digitally, which I can upload to Google Drive and give the link.
Okay.
Because I tried looking for the DVD. Well, actually, there's a Blu-ray for it, but it's only a part of this Hideaki Anno live-action Blu-ray collection, which is like $500.
Ooh, so it's a Japanese Blu-ray?
Yeah, but according to Sean Barry, it includes English subtitles.
Okay, so it's like they're trying to appeal to both markets with a niche product.
Yeah, well, this box set came out around the time that Shin Godzilla did, so I guess they were trying to cash in on Hideaki Anno's popularity.
Let me guess, does it include Cutie Honey?
Yeah, it includes Cutie Honey, all of his live action works, not the anime films.
All right. Which I'm guessing for some people that's all they care about.
Yeah.
I want to see my Japanese cartoons fight each other and experience emotional breakdowns. I don't know what voice this is. It's some kind of the voice I chose for a typical anime fan.
That sounds like a weird voice in the future.
Sounds to me like a weird mix of like George Lucas and Jimmy Stewart.
A little bit. My name is Phil Burster.
Phil Burster. Come on, Lori.
Come on, Lori. That's a Brock Baker reference for those who don't know. So yeah, is there anything else you want to share about this film, David?
I think the one thing that I legitimately did like about Shiki-Jitsu was the cinematography. Because it feels like a live action anime film in weird ways. Shin Godzilla feels that way too.
In what ways?
Like there's
do characters feel over the top or something?
Where are we talking about, Shin or Shiki-Jitsu?
Shiki-Jitsu. That's what you said. It feels like an anime.
Oh yeah. Well, you know how like in some animes when a character is like they're having like an intimate moment, like talking about something personal or talking about something philosophical. The shot is not focused on the characters most of the time. It's either
at the flowers or the
sky or a city or a certain landscape,
or like a panning
That's exactly
shot.
what Shiki-Jitsu does.
Okay.
Although Shiki-Jitsu kind of like overkills it sometimes.
Like a slow time lapse like shot of like a landscape and the character's voice over it as they like go on an existential crisis about fucking aliens invading the earth or whatever the fuck is going on in your chosen anime.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's even a one small animation sequence where if I remember correctly, it was Ayako Fujitani during her character's mental breakdown. Because like Dylan read off the Wikipedia page, the character that Anno is supposed to represent and the character that Ayako is supposed to represent, they eventually get together, and for a small period of time, Ayako's character goes through like this panicking phase where every time the dude leaves the room, she panics and just goes crazy. And it's kind of sweet at first, but then eventually you're like, this bitch is crazy. And I love Ayako Fujitani, but her performance is great though. Because I'm used to seeing her in tokusatsu stuff like the Gamera trilogy and that one episode of Ultraman Max. And
Have you seen Man
But
from
this is
Reno? Because apparently, wait, was she in Man of Reno? Man from Reno?
Yeah,
Okay.
She's in a Man from Reno.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know we had like her and another dude from Final Wars, because that's what Sean Barry always told me about. I know I haven't gotten around to seeing that movie.
That's another one of those movies that Sean Murray is very into. Man from Reno. And
Yeah, Sean Murray. Sean Murray, yes.
I watched it at his behest, and I can't say, yeah, it's a pretty good movie. Everybody should go check it out. As far as I know, it's still on Netflix.
The same Sean Murray who gave us the disappointing No Man's Sky. So,
oh yeah.
So, but yeah.
But is that guy's name, really?
That's his name. Yeah, that's Sean Murray.
Awesome.
Yes, everything is going to be in this. Everything is going to be in this video game. There's going to be is there a multiplayer? Yes, there's multiplayer. Can you do anything in the game? Yes, you can do everything in the game. Are you lying to us? Yes.
Why did you just sound like Garrett Edwards?
That is essentially what Sean Murray looks like. I mean, it sounds like. You listen to any interview from like leading up to No Man's Sky's release. He keeps lying. He keeps saying yes to every single question. Like, yeah, very sheepishly. Yes. It's in the movie. Yes, it's in the game. Yes.
His personality is actually what my satirization of Garrett Edwards is, where he's just like, yeah, No Man's Sky is the greatest game ever made.
That is it. That is exactly what this game is going to be, the be all end all game. You can do anything you want in this game.
You can pretty much just do whatever you want. I mean, really, and it's fucking great. Yeah,
it's the greatest game ever made.
Not to toot my own horn or anything, but toot, it's perfect.
Oh boy.
Fucking great.
I'm gonna have to look for Sean One Man's Lie, Sean Murray's Lie compilation. I'm gonna send this to you guys right now. But to move back from Sean Murray to Sean Barry, I know he's been busting my balls to see that movie, and I know I haven't gone around to seeing it, but I do want to see it. I'm going to see it eventually, Sean, and I am curious to see what other. I'm curious to see more of the movies that Ayako Fujitani has been in, because I did like her in Gamera, and I have wanted to. From what I've been told, she's a very talented actress, and I do want to see more of what she's been in. Which
Well, if you do.
Mm-hmm.
Not to ride you even more about seeing the movie, but if you want to get a better idea of what she's capable of as an actress, definitely do watch Man from Reno. She was something of a revelation for me in that film, because I was used to, like David said, watching her in like the Gamera movies and always her speaking Japanese or being dubbed over. Right. And in real life, she speaks very good English. Like, I wish she had been
God. So she's no Ann Patterson, thank God.
Yeah, I wish she had been Ann Patterson in Shin Godzilla. She knows Anno. They're friendly. I guess she was,
not old enough.
She knows Anno and Higuchi.
Or maybe she, I don't know. Maybe she was. It's possible. Maybe she wasn't Japanese enough to appeal to the. Because obviously Ayako Ann Patterson, she is there for as a lot as eye candy, and maybe by Japanese standards, this is just a theory. Maybe she. I don't know disrespect to Ayako Fujitani. She's a beautiful actress in my eyes, but maybe by Japanese standards, she was not as preferable of a choice as the actress they got to play Ann Patterson. Because I guess from what I understand with the Japanese movie industry, they tend to focus on like roughly the same 5 or 10 to 15 actors for every movie, according to what my friends tell me. And so maybe they have a very strict guideline on attractive actors and actresses. Maybe.
I think what actually happened is that her work on Man from Reno kind of created a scheduling conflict where even if they had wanted her to be in Shin Godzilla, she probably couldn't have. Okay. But she would have been perfect. She would have been perfect for the role, because not only is she a great actress and speaks great English, but also she's half American, so she would make more sense in that role, entirely.
And what were you gonna say, Dave? Oh, sorry.
But I said, Man from Reno was produced in 2013 or 2014. So if they wanted to, they could have easily gotten her.
Considering how rushed that movie was, how last minute that movie was made.
Right.
Okay, then maybe there was some other reason. Point being, she wasn't in the movie. She should have been in the movie. She would have been my choice. She would have been perfect for it. Damn it, Japan! What are you doing?
Maybe it's
Get on your game.
Maybe Toho was like, "Oh, she's in a Gamera movie. We can't have her."
Japan just has a bad track record anyway with people speaking English in their movies. Like I noticed recently, I was watching one of the Ip Man movies. I think it was the second one, and I was like, these white people aren't terrible. I think Japan just has the worst white people. Like
Hey!
in any movie.
I don't know why.
Like, seriously,
I don't know why I was offended because I'm not technically white.
Yeah, but you
No,
sound white,
no.
so it counts.
All right, so
You would be a more convincing white man than some of the people they put in their Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
Jesus.
maybe they just need me for a voiceover role. So, anyways, thank you very much for bringing this movie to our attention, David. And if I do get the chance after I watch Man from Reno, I do want to check this film out.
Now Sean Barry or Sean Murray is gonna ride your balls to watch this movie.
You need to see this movie after you play No Man's Sky. We fixed it. It's better now. You don't just walk around on the planets. Now you get to build a base while you're walking around on planets. It's gonna be wonderful. It's the greatest game ever made. Also watch
Pretty
Man
good,
from Reno.
Fucking great, Just saying. It's not the greatest film ever made because I didn't make it, but it's pretty close, It's right up there. It goes like this movie, Monsters, Godzilla, Rogue One. That's my top 4, And then somewhere under that is like The Godfather. Like, I don't know.
So, by the way, David, where does this movie rank under the list of Hideaki Anno projects you've seen?
I wouldn't say it's one of his best or strongest. It's an interesting film because it's very experimental and it's very trippy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's any Anno work.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, if you're a fan of Anno, it's the type of movie that would be highly recommended to you. But I wouldn't recommend this to like any typical common moviegoer.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, this is a small indie artistic film, and those films don't really capture the attention of mainstream audiences.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're interested on how Ayako Fujitani acts besides in tokusatsu, this is an interesting to watch and also interesting film from Hideaki Anno.
Okay, interesting. So, thank you very much for bringing this film to our attention, David. And I believe now would be a good time to start wrapping things up. So, anything you guys want to promote before we close things off?
I want to promote our top 15. I'd want to promote our top 15 chants, but I feel like if I do that again, it'll jinx it.
Well, I guess we'll just take that brief mention as an endorsement. And yes, Dylan?
I mean, keep watching this channel for things that I'm often in. My channel's kind of dead at the moment. Not even due to my usual laziness, but because I'm having a lot of laptop issues of late. So until I get a tech upgrade, my channel is going to be dead regardless. But I'm on this channel a lot. We got some things coming in the near future.
Okay,
especially if you like giant monkeys. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Sounds very good. And you can check out my channel, which I've been recently putting out a very delayed series of Gundam videos. So far, they've been getting a lot of positive response. Thank you, everybody, for who has already watched it, to who has liked it, enjoyed it, or comment on it. So that looks like that brings us to the end of another episode of the Sons of Serizawa podcast.
Wait.
Yes?
I just thought of something. If there is a demand from our followers on the Dank Bill memes page for me to write a treatment on this Bill cinematic universe
on the Phil Burster film Hank Burster
professional podcaster.
If there is a demand from our fans, which is typically like Patrick Galvin, Joseph Azina, and Andrew, I would so totally write this. I would copyright Phil Burster.
And while you're at it, be sure to check out our friend Tyler Soule's book, Durantis the Lost Serpent #1 and Hank Steiner, Monster Detective. and be on the lookout for his upcoming sequel comic to issue 2 of Durantis the Lost Serpent. So anyways, yes?
That should be Bill's segment on this show. That should be Bill's segment on this show. He should just bring in memes and review them and tell the audience whether they are
a meme reviewer. Like, that hasn't been done before on the internet, but I like it. So, anyways, thank you very much for joining us. That has been our show for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I have been your host, Andres Perez, a.k.a. Kaichi Noir. He was Bill Worster, a.k.a. Zazubaar.
I'm Gorzard, the maker of Dank Bill memes.
I'm Super DM64, the maker of nothing.
Except for wit and sassiness and sarcasm alike. And until next time, everybody, take care. The science is sound.